This is filthy as hell. Are you blind?" Amanda, the head of the janitorial team, barked, her voice cold and sharp as a blade, cutting through the gleaming conference room. Jordan, the new black cleaning staff member, only had time to glance at the spotless pane of glass she'd just wiped before replying, unflinching, "I literally just cleaned that." Before Jordan could say another word, Amanda snatched up the steaming cup of coffee and hurled it across the table. Dark liquid splashed across the glass and dripped onto the floor, leaving irregular blotches like a fresh wound. Arms crossed, Amanda leaned forward, narrowing her eyes as she growled, "Now clean it again." No one in the office suspected that behind Jordan's simple cleaning uniform lay a secret powerful enough to upend the entire corporation. Everything truly began on a Monday morning in New York City at Kingsley Enterprises, a real estate empire worth millions, famed for its blockbuster deals and opulent work environment. Right outside the main lobby, an old motorcycle rattled to a stop amid a procession of sleek luxury cars. The rider was Jordan Carter, a young black woman with rich brown skin, her hair neatly tied in a bun under a faded helmet. She wore a gray hoodie and frayed canvas sneakers, her shoulders bearing a worn backpack, an image of humble simplicity starkly at odds with Kingsley Enterprises' extravagance. Few knew that behind this modest exterior, Jordan carried a monumental secret. She wasn't just another young person searching for a job. She was the eldest daughter of Robert Kingsley, the company's founder and chairman, the man whose name was synonymous with America's most powerful real estate dynasty. Yet today, Jordan chose not to enter as the heiress in a tailored suit, wielding inherited power. Instead, she walked in as an invisible, a member of the cleaning staff, determined to discover the truth behind the empire her father built. Jordan parked her bike and drew in a steady breath. As she passed through the automatic glass doors, she immediately felt the curious, condescending stares of impeccably dressed employees striding across the marble floors. Polished leather shoes glanced up at her before sweeping away as if she didn't exist, or, if she did, counted for nothing more than a smudge in their perfect world. At the reception desk stood Kevin Matthews, a senior manager in his mid-30s, tall and broad-shouldered, with slicked-back hair and an expensive suit that fit him like a glove, along with a perpetual smirk of self-satisfaction. With one swift glance, Kevin sized Jordan up and dismissed her. "Wrong entrance. Delivery people go around back, didn't you know?" His voice dripped with contempt and thinly veiled disdain for this casually dressed black woman among the sea of suits and ties. Jordan met Kevin's gaze and offered a faint smile, though her eyes burned with unshakable resolve. She recognized this as the first invisible barrier she had to shatter: prejudice, discrimination, and the hollow arrogance of those who believe their status entitles them to demean others. In that moment, Jordan stepped into the shadow of power at Kingsley Enterprises, where every secret, every dark corner, every ounce of pride and bias would soon be laid bare. The real story begins here. The air in the Kingsley Enterprises lobby was just as cold, but beneath the surface the jabs and whispers were spreading like an unseen electric current. The moment Kevin finished speaking, Jordan offered a small, steady smile, no bowing of her head, no stepping back, and asked softly, "Hello. I'm wondering if there are any positions available here. I really need a job." Kevin narrowed his eyes, sizing her up like a shabby item that didn't belong in a high-end boutique. He glanced over at Madison Blake, the white receptionist with sleek blonde hair, perfectly applied makeup, and those quick, "I've sized you up" eyes. Madison looked Jordan over, then tilted her lips into a smirk, hiding contempt behind a swipe of deep red lipstick. "Oh, let me check," Madison said with feigned concern, her fingers tapping lightly on the keyboard while other receptionists shot curious, scrutinizing glances. Kevin crossed his arms and let out a dismissive chuckle, his eyes never leaving Jordan, clearly convinced she belonged in the lowest of roles. Madison pretended to scroll through the hiring list, deliberately keeping Jordan waiting longer than necessary. Finally, she looked up, feigning surprise. "Oh, I'm so sorry, but there's only one opening. It's with the cleaning crew." Her voice carried just loud enough for nearby staff to hear. A few stifled laughs followed, and several people exchanged looks as if watching a private joke at Jordan's expense. Kevin seized the moment to assert his authority, turning to Jordan with a cold smile. "Well, you really want to work here, right? I think that role suits you." Every word dripped with condescension, as though he were granting a favor Jordan had no right to receive. In a place where every handshake and every tailored suit signified status, a young black woman, without pedigree, without connections, without designer clothes, daring to apply for a job was, in their eyes, the height of presumption. No one cared about her abilities. They judged her entirely by her appearance and her skin color. Jordan stayed composed, her smile courteous, but her eyes burning with resolve. She nodded once, without hesitation. "All right, I'll take that position. I don't mind starting at the bottom." Her answer surprised Madison, and Kevin's chuckle turned into outright laughter, as if he'd just witnessed a complete comedy routine. "Great, tomorrow at 6 a.m., don't be late," he said, clapping his hands as though he'd just dealt with a minor nuisance. Jordan offered a polite nod and stepped away from the desk, leaving behind the hum of gossiping voices and the curious, contemptuous stares of the crowd, unaware that she had already memorized every face, every word, every attitude she encountered. Outside the lobby, the morning sun was just breaking through. Jordan paused on the steps, took a deep breath, and steadied herself more than ever. Beneath her calm exterior lay a silent determination. If you want to change a system, you first have to see its roots. No matter how low you have to go, no matter how many hostile eyes you endure. And Kingsley Enterprises, the pride of her family, was about to face an unprecedented reckoning. The next morning, before the sun had even broken the horizon, Jordan was already standing in front of the Kingsley Enterprises lobby. No longer the unfamiliar stranger waiting at the reception desk, she donned her simple slate blue uniform, gripped a brand-new mop handle, straightened her back, and calmly watched the pale shafts of light filtering through the frosted glass. Her journey as an invisible employee had begun. Stepping into the cleaner's wing, Jordan immediately came face to face with Amanda Whitmore, the towering supervisor with tightly pulled back blonde hair, a permanently cold expression, and lips pressed into a smug, condescending smile. Amanda had ruled Kingsley Enterprises for over 8 years. Here, she was the law. The moment she laid eyes on Jordan, a young black woman in plain clothes who showed no sign of deference, Amanda's undisguised loathing flared. Without a greeting or introduction, Amanda jabbed toward a bucket of murky water at Jordan's feet, her voice as sharp as a blade. "That's your assignment. Don't make me come check again." Before the words even finished, Amanda spun on her heel. The click-clack of her heels rang through the hall, each step driving down on the dignity of those she oversaw. Jordan silently accepted the tools and began mopping the long, chilly corridor. Every time she finished a stretch, Amanda would reappear, eyes scanning like a security camera. "See this streak? How are you cleaning this? No one wants to see filthy hallways in this company." At the slightest speck of dust, Amanda ruthlessly shamed her in front of passing office workers, some snickering, others turning away as if she didn't exist. Amanda's cruelty didn't stop at words. She deliberately assigned Jordan the toughest jobs: the executive floor restrooms, dusty storage closets, the grand conference room after a catered event, strewn with spilled red wine, cake crumbs, and used napkins. Each time Jordan completed a task, Amanda inspected her work and sneered, "You call this clean? I wouldn't expect any better from people like you." Amanda's emphasis on people like you stabbed like needles, a blatant nod to Jordan's race, class, and status. Amanda even weaponized her petty authority to make Jordan into office entertainment. She'd summon her to the cafeteria at midday, point at a single dribble of spilled water, and bark, "Clean this up, properly, or the whole room will remember your face." The staff would burst into laughter. Some discreetly snapped photos or videos of Jordan kneeling to wipe the floor, while Amanda beamed at her triumph. The worst pain wasn't the grueling work itself, but the cold, contemptuous stares of those who'd once been potential colleagues, now turned spectators to her humiliation. Some days, Jordan would scrub her hands under icy water, watching the veins stand out on her scratched skin, feeling a bitterness too deep for words. Yet, through every cruel remark and unreasonable demand, Jordan remained silent, composed. In her eyes, the faces and words of Amanda and her sycophants sharpened into focus, pieces of a dark portrait hidden within what was supposed to be a symbol of success, integrity, and civilized America. With each new humiliation, Jordan's resolve only deepened. To change a system, you must witness its darkest corners firsthand, no matter how many wounds it inflicts on your pride. And this trial by fire was only just beginning. During her first days on the job at Kingsley Enterprises, Jordan Carter gradually fell into the rhythm of her work, quiet, solitary, but charged with an undercurrent of tension. She'd already weathered Amanda Whitmore's harsh rebukes, but the real hell at this company ran far deeper and colder, driven by the ruthless power games of Kevin Matthews, who from the very start had made no effort to hide his contempt for this young black woman. Kevin's hatred didn't stem only from Jordan's race or background, but from his own arrogance and ambition. As one of the firm's senior managers, he was convinced he held all the cards: authority, the respect of his peers, and the power to decide the fates of those he deemed beneath him. In his eyes, people like Jordan existed only to highlight his own glory. It all came to a head one Wednesday morning, just after Jordan had finished mopping the West Wing hallway, a high-traffic route for executives and VIP guests. Sweat still beaded on her forehead when the sharp click of leather shoes announced Kevin's arrival. He stood before her in a perfectly pressed charcoal suit, eyes cold with barely concealed pride. He paused, eyeing the floor like a critic inspecting a painting, then sneered, "Girl, I thought you already cleaned this. How come there's still a streak?" By stressing "girl," he delivered an invisible slap to Jordan's dignity, his voice loud enough for nearby staff to hear. A few passers-by glanced over and smirked, but nobody stepped in. Jordan bent down to re-inspect the floor, her gaze never meeting his. In a calm, steady voice she said, "I'll clean it again right away, sir." His pleasure at wielding this petty power was palpable. He stepped closer and deliberately dropped a paper towel onto the floor. "Oh, looks like you missed this." He feigned surprise, then chuckled with a finance associate nearby, who couldn't hide his own look of disgust. This routine repeated itself all week. Whenever Jordan finished a section, Kevin would materialize like a phantom, dropping pens, papers, or coffee onto her freshly cleaned surfaces and forcing her to redo everything in front of an audience of amused onlookers. Once, as she polished the glass wall outside a conference room, Kevin pretended to fumble a giant coffee cup, sending it crashing onto the carpet. "Careful, girl. If you can't handle a simple cleaning, how do you expect to last here?" he taunted, his eyes scanning her like a stain that could never be scrubbed out of Kingsley's polished image. These acts of bullying were more than a physical drain. They were brutal psychological assaults. Every time Jordan completed a task, Kevin would appear to undo her work with a dismissive shrug or a cutting remark. Other junior managers soon took up the habit, sometimes accidentally, sometimes maliciously, joining in the cruel joke. A few female employees whispered behind Jordan's back, pointing and saying, "Look at her, mopping forever and still not clean." Someone even remarked, "This isn't anywhere you can just stroll into a job, you know?" Amanda Whitmore, ever eager to humiliate new hires, teamed up with Kevin this time. She began assigning Jordan the toughest shifts: late-night cleans, overnight duties. If Jordan finished early, Amanda would summon Kevin for a re-inspection, and the cycle would start all over. "Look again, still not clean. Don't think a half-hearted sweep will do." Amanda's tone was metallic and icy. Kevin stood beside her, arms crossed, flashing a sly grin as if to dare Jordan to prove him wrong. "Want to try for a higher position, girl? Around here, everyone learns to accept their place." Though Jordan remained outwardly composed, inside she felt turmoil. Some nights she'd slip into a restroom stall alone, running her hands under freezing water and recalling her mother's words. "Patience is your strongest weapon against injustice." She catalogued every face, every word, every tiny act of cruelty, meticulously mapping the dark power structure at Kingsley Enterprises. Occasionally, she caught Linda Evans, the lone, sympathetic admin assistant, offering Jordan a discreet nod of encouragement or leaving a cold bottle of water by her mop bucket. A small gesture of warmth amid this frozen battlefield. Jordan sometimes wondered if she should fight back or speak up, but she knew that anger alone would blind her to the system's true nature, where prejudice and arrogance were woven into every tile and every glance. She accepted her role as a shadow, not out of weakness, but to see how far the powerful would go in trampling someone they considered worthless. Kevin Matthews' games grew more sophisticated. He started rallying the junior managers with offhand jokes and bets on how long Jordan could endure it all, even setting up a private chat group to egg each other on. He didn't realize that each cruel laugh, each emphasis on "girl," carved another crack in the pride of the very empire he thought he controlled. One chilly afternoon, Jordan had just finished tidying the 11th floor reception area when Kevin swaggered in, holding a thick stack of documents. He scanned the room, then ripped a sheet free and tossed it on the floor. "Girl, you dropped this. Pick it up." Jordan bent to retrieve it, her expression unreadable, but inside, a storm of resentment, fury, and unwavering resolve churned. As soon as she stood, Kevin pretended not to notice and spilled hot coffee beside the sofa. "Clean that up, too. Don't make me say it again." A few finance and legal staff watched in silence. One frowned, but quickly looked back at his phone, pretending nothing had happened. Day after day, Jordan learned that the majority's silence could weigh heavier than Kevin's insults. In that vicious cycle, every mocking smile, every spiteful prank, every indifferent stare covertly built a dark empire in the heart of Kingsley's power. Yet, within that suffocating space, Jordan's resolve only strengthened. She knew that without enduring and observing firsthand, she'd never fully expose Kingsley Enterprises' rotten core. And she also knew that those petty power plays would eventually face the light of justice. The darkness was still thick, But Jordan had already begun to see the first fissures in the glittering facade her father once trusted without question. Deep inside, the spark of rebellion, though small, burned fiercely in her eyes. The very people mocking her had no idea their fate lay in the hands of the young woman they underestimated. Jordan's next days at Kingsley Enterprises unfolded as a relentless series of trials, where Kevin Matthews's petty power plays and Amanda Whitmore's ruthless authoritarianism revealed their true colors. Everyone in the company seemed so accustomed to watching those in authority gang up on the powerless that no one even bothered to intervene. Occasionally, Linda Evans, the lone sympathetic administrative assistant, would cast Jordan a pitying glance, but that small kindness was swallowed by the sea of indifference. On Jordan's 13th day, the atmosphere in the office already smelled of storm. That morning, she had to re-clean the entire grand conference room, site of last night's shareholders' meeting. The floor was speckled with footprints, the long table littered with glasses of water, coffee cups, and crumbs from tired guests. As Jordan crouched to meticulously wipe every smudge from the walnut tabletop, the tap-tap of high heels sounded like a war drum. Amanda Whitmore swept in, her golden ponytail tight, lips painted bright red, eyes cold as steel, scanning the room before settling on Jordan. Behind her trailed a handful of managers and staff still buzzing about figures and contracts from the meeting. Amanda stopped beside Jordan, arms folded, her smile dripping with mockery. "What are you doing, Jordan? Look at this." She pointed to a barely perceptible streak on the table, so faint only someone looking for trouble could see it. Jordan lifted her head, calm in her eyes. "I just finished. It might still be damp. I'll wipe it again right now." Amanda narrowed her eyes and curved her mouth into a cruel grin. Without another word, she grabbed a full coffee cup from the table and flung it down onto the pristine surface. Hot coffee splashed across the wood, ran over the table edge, dripped onto the floor, and even splattered Jordan's shoes. A few onlookers gasped. Some froze, shocked by such blatant cruelty. But Amanda wasn't done. She leaned in, voice laced with condescension and power. "Now, let's see you make it clean. And remember, not a single coffee stain allowed, girl. I don't want to see a drop of coffee in Kingsley Enterprises' conference rooms." Silence fell. The chatting staff went quiet, their expressions shifting from boredom to astonishment, and then to a cruel curiosity. Several even pulled out phones under the guise of texting to record the scene. Kevin Matthews, passing by the glass door, spotted this spectacle, stopped, folded his arms against the wall, and let a pleased smirk spread across his face. To him, this was the perfect lesson for someone who dared overstep her place. In that moment, Jordan felt the tension so thick she could almost taste it. The coffee stains on the table felt like wounds to her pride, pressing down on her heart as if to crush any last trace of dignity. Yet she said nothing. She quietly set down her bucket and mop, picked up a clean rag, and began wiping up the coffee as if this were her only task on earth. Each motion was deliberate and sure. No tremor betrayed the storm raging within. Amanda watched, waiting for an outburst, like every other victim she'd broken. But Jordan gave her no satisfaction. With each swipe, the table regained its shine. Jordan's eyes remained steady, her mouth pressed into a firm line to hold back the bitterness. Kevin tapped his knuckles against the wall and tilted his head at Amanda, exchanging an unspoken nod. "Look how docile she is." A few staff whispered. Some snorted with amusement, others turned away. Their silence weighed heavier than any taunt. In a corner, Linda Evans watched in muted outrage, clutching her files. She'd seen new hires bullied before, but never with such public, calculated cruelty. Yet again, she said nothing, burdened by the knowledge that one person alone couldn't change this system. At least, not yet. After her display of dominance, Amanda turned to her colleagues with a cold laugh. Just making sure new people learn how high our standards are. Her words rang like iron through the silence. Jordan understood then. Here, she wasn't just the cleaning lady, she was the target for every prejudice about race, status, and the arrogance of those in power. When Jordan finished, she finally raised her head to Amanda, her dark eyes calm but resolute. "It's clean now, Miss Whitmore." She spoke in a steady tone, no more, no less. Amanda, surprised at the absence of tears or rebellion, merely shrugged and walked away, bored with her game. Kevin followed without a word, his sly grin lingering. Once alone in the conference room, Jordan sank into a shadowed corner, her hands still trembling. The deepest wounds, she realized, came not from the spilled coffee, but from the cold stares of dozens, the silent laughter, and a system that protected its own privileges. She closed her eyes, inhaled slowly, and forced down the emotions threatening to break free. Inside her roiled two currents, one of righteous fury at such injustice, the other of clear-headed determination. She had vowed to expose the filth beneath Kingsley Enterprises' red carpet facade. She told herself, "They must never see my weakness. They must never believe a coffee spill or a cruel word can break me. I will return to this hell, but on my terms, and they will pay for what they've done." And in that silent room behind the closed wooden door, a final drop of coffee fell from the rag to the floor, sending a ripple through the stillness, signaling that everything was about to change forever. When the conference room door clicked shut behind Amanda, her hollow laughter and Kevin Matthews's heavy footsteps faded into the hallway. Jordan remained standing in the vast chamber, her eyes dark with pain, yet burning with unbreakable resolve. Little did anyone know that, in that moment of utter humiliation, she found her fiercest determination. If Kingsley Enterprises was a castle, each of its bricks bore the memory of how it had treated its lowliest subjects. From that last straw onward, Jordan's view of the world shifted. She was no longer merely the young woman bending to mop floors. She began to regard everyone around her with the keen eye of an investigator. While silently sweeping the corridors, washing cups in the pantry, or stooping on the emergency stairwell, Jordan observed faces. Seeing the stark divide between those in power, the indifferent majority, and the few who still showed kindness. Amanda Whitmore remained the petty little queen, ever eager to prove her worth by trampling others. She relished bullying her subordinates, drawing strength from their fear. Her inner circle, men like Kevin, thrived on gossip and took pleasure in watching the cleaning crew suffering to bolster their own authority. When Amanda strode down the hallway, colleagues scurried aside as if parting for a stalking predator. Anyone who defied her was instantly humiliated or relegated to the most menial tasks. Kevin Matthews was scarcely better. At every briefing with department heads, he became the center of mocking laughter and pointed remarks about the useless cleaning staff, especially Jordan. He never hesitated to crack cruel jokes as she passed the reception. "Careful there, girl. This floor's not for just anyone to make spotless." He regarded Jordan as if she were a strange creature, nothing more. Each barb was meant to reinforce his own untouchable power. During lunch breaks, Jordan sometimes overheard hushed HR gossip, heard Amanda yelled at that cleaning girl again. "Yeah, she seems so meek but tough, won't quit no matter how much abuse she takes." Some laughed, others merely shook their heads. Yet no one dared speak up or defend her. Still, amid that sea of indifference, Jordan noticed a faint light. Linda Evans, a slender administrative officer in her early 30s, was the only one who met Jordan's gaze without contempt or pity. The first time they crossed paths, when Amanda forced Jordan to kneel and scrub the floor before them all, Linda quietly placed a bottle of water and a paper towel beside her and whispered, "Be careful with that bleach. It's strong stuff." That tiny act of kindness felt like a lifeline pulling Jordan from a pit of despair. Though Linda never openly took Jordan's side, she would slip her small comforts, an extra cup of water, a scrap of cake, a gentle word, whenever she could. None of the powerful ever noticed, only Jordan remembered. Gradually, Jordan mapped out the clear hierarchy within Kingsley Enterprises. 1. The powerful, Amanda, Kevin, and a few department heads, who ruled through fear. 2. The indifferent, most employees, who bowed their heads, performed their duties, and treated injustice as someone else's problem. 3. The kind few, like Linda, who strove to preserve their conscience even when alone and powerless. In the days that followed, Jordan focused on memorizing every detail. Amanda's habit of falsifying performance reports to mask her own failures. Kevin's eagerness to catch subordinates, especially Jordan, making mistakes all to curry favor with leadership. The HR staff's passive stance, turning a blind eye to misconduct to avoid getting involved. Once, Jordan overheard Kevin whispering with Amanda in the hallway, "If they don't know their place, just fire them. Don't let that silly diversity culture of Kingsley soften this company." Amanda sneered, her eyes flicking over Jordan like a cold steel blade. "Don't worry. As long as I'm here, nobody can dare revolt." That utter disregard for rules weighed on Jordan like stones on her chest. She realized that changing this rotten system would require more than words. She had to expose the true faces of the petty tyrants and the cowardly silence of the many. Jordan learned to mask her emotions, always wearing a slight smile and a calm demeanor, even when she longed to scream. She began keeping a journal, recording every slight, every lie Amanda told, every cruel joke from Kevin, and every indifferent glance from HR. It became the blueprint for the silent revolution she was preparing. Linda became her sole emotional anchor. Occasionally, during breaks, Linda would lean in and whisper, "Stay strong, Jordan. Don't let them break you." Those words, though small, carried the weight of a vow. Jordan also understood that in this realm of power, everyone must choose, bow down or stand up. But to stand up required preparation and timing. She would not rush into retaliation or prematurely reveal the truth, because to topple a decaying system, one must understand its roots, who orchestrated the cruelty, who abetted it, and who might join her in resistance. Some nights, Jordan lay on her narrow bed, poring over her neatly written journal. Each page, each symbol, was part of the grand plan she would enact at the decisive moment. The darkness within Kingsley Enterprises had never felt so dense, but Jordan could see a glimmer of light at the tunnel's end. A light kindled not by power alone, but by the courage of the powerless and the watchful hearts of the few who dared to care. In that darkness, Jordan whispered to herself, "I will remember every face. I will change this place, not for myself, but for everyone who has been looked down upon and trampled under the guise of authority." And in that silence, Kingsley Enterprises, once her family's proud legacy, stirred toward a storm no one saw coming. In the days that followed, Jordan Carter continued to watch and record every expression at Kingsley Enterprises, moving through an atmosphere that was quiet on the surface but thick with suspicion. She knew this chapter would eventually reach its end. She only had to wait for the right moment. But on that fateful Monday morning, The company's polite facade shattered when a single announcement sent shockwaves through the halls. Robert Kingsley, the founder and chairman, was coming for an on-site review and would name his successor in person. The internal alert pinged simultaneously on every computer, every phone, every shared display. In an instant, the usual Monday lethargy gave way to frantic anticipation. Down every corridor, in every department, at every reception desk, employees hurriedly straightened their attire. Chairs and desks were polished, and even the most indifferent faces scrubbed away signs of fatigue and stress. Kevin Matthews was among the first to receive the message. A self-satisfied grin spread across his face as he strode into the manager's meeting room, where Amanda Whitmore was double-checking the time logs. Leaning in so the entire management team could hear, he whispered, "Listen up, everyone. Today is our chance. Kingsley himself is here to pick his successor. Whoever shines the brightest stands a real shot at a promotion." His eyes flicked across the room, gleaming with personal ambition. For Kevin, this was more than a chance to impress the boss. It was a stepping stone to the power he'd always craved. Amanda couldn't hide her excitement either. She straightened her collar, reapplied her lipstick, and gave Kevin a sly smile. "Honestly, Kevin, I can't imagine anyone more fit than you. If you take over operations, the rest of these employees will know better than to step out of line." Her tone dripped with complicity. She believed that if Kevin didn't get the promotion, she, his ruthless right hand, might just be next in line. Of course, neither of them ever considered Jordan Carter as a contender. To them, the black cleaning crew member was nothing more than a shadow at the edge of their world, a convenient target for frustration or a prop in their power games. All over the building, rumors flew about who would succeed. Some speculated it would be the youngest Kingsley son from his second marriage, a fair-skinned young man, fresh from studying in Europe, who'd often appeared alongside his father in the press. Others whispered it might be a rising manager like Kevin or Andrea Williams, the sharp new finance director, modern, dynamic, just the image this company needs. No one suspected that the real candidate was the woman in the navy gray uniform, quietly sweeping trash in the 12th floor hallway, cataloging every tiny detail. That morning, Kevin called a brief huddle of the management team, reminding everyone to be impeccable in their appearance and exude professionalism. Amanda seized the moment to assert her authority, especially over Jordan. She summoned Jordan to the break room and pointed out every speck of dust on a chair, every crumb on a table, her voice as cold as ice. "Today, there can be no mistakes. If I find anything less than spotless, you know what happens." Some staff chuckled, others shook their heads in pity, but nobody dared speak up in Jordan's defense. Amanda went on. "Don't think that because the big boss is here you'll get special treatment. People like you. Just do your job, and that's all we expect." Jordan met Amanda's gaze, her own eyes steady. She wore a faint, unreadable smile, one no one there understood. She wasn't afraid, she was simply waiting for the perfect moment to turn the tables. All around the company, the anticipation for Robert Kingsley's arrival was electric. Departments buzzed with half-spoken criticism and anxiety, each fearing that the new boss might disrupt their carefully maintained order. Linda Evans, though silent, watched with growing concern. She saw Jordan given heavier workloads and shorter breaks. When Linda tried to help Jordan once, Amanda caught her and snapped, "Linda, want to scrub toilets with her?" Everyone sticks to their own job. That same morning, normally distant, stone-faced colleagues suddenly plastered on forced smiles, eager to showcase themselves to the chairman. Kevin stalked every floor, inspecting every detail to score brownie points. Spotting Jordan mopping outside the main conference room, he sneered. "Girl, if that floor's not spotless today, I'll personally see you escorted out." His threat echoed through the crowded corridor, but Jordan merely smiled and continued her work. No one noticed the spark in her eyes, the light of someone holding the company's deepest secret, poised to expose every lie in the system. In a hidden corner, Linda watched Jordan, her lips pressed tight. She knew the real storm had never felt as close as it did that morning. And in the quiet hallway, Jordan flipped through her meticulously kept notes, whispering to herself, "All the pain, all the endurance, it hasn't been wasted. Today, the truth comes out." At that moment, the elevator doors at the main lobby chimed ding, and a group of impeccably dressed executives filed out. At their center, the man everyone recognized, Robert Kingsley. All eyes turned to him, but not a single one, least of all Kevin's and Amanda's, realized that behind his aura of authority, a tempest was quietly gathering. They had no idea that the greatest upheaval of their lives stood right before them. And, in just a few hours, Kingsley Enterprises would never be the same. The elevator's dry ding echoed through the grand lobby, instantly sucking all sound out of Kingsley Enterprises. From senior managers to interns, administrators to cleaners, every employee straightened their attire and fell into line, eyes fixed on the elevator doors as if awaiting a king's coronation. Robert Kingsley, the founder, the embodiment of authority, the soul of the company, emerged with measured grace. His footsteps rang out on the marble floor, his sharp features and seasoned gaze surveying the crowd. Behind him trailed two personal assistants, the head of legal, and the in-house communications chief, clipboard and microphone in hand, ready for this momentous occasion. From the first beat of his entrance, the entire office froze. Kevin Matthews and Amanda Whitmore snapped to the front of the line, plastering on forced smiles and perfect posture, every bit the consummate professionals. Kevin shot Amanda a quick glance, ambition and excitement glinting in his eyes as he silently hoped his own name would be called. Robert made no rush of it. He slowly swept his gaze across the sea of faces, from veteran executives to fresh-faced recruits, then paused, almost imperceptibly, on those lingering at the back of the line, including Jordan Carter in her unassuming slate blue uniform, hair tied back, still a bit damp with morning sweat from her cleaning shift. A hush fell as Robert raised the microphone. His voice was warm, but carried undeniable weight. To every member of Kingsley Enterprises, today marks a landmark moment for me personally, and for this entire company. I have devoted my life to building not just a real estate powerhouse, but a place where every individual is respected, empowered, and given the chance to become their very best. He paused, casting a knowing look at the leadership team. He noticed the eager, nervous, even arrogant expressions on Kevin's and Amanda's faces. Yet, over time, I have come to see that we have drifted away from those core values. So today, I am here to announce a decision that will forever alter the future of this corporation. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Department heads exchanged uneasy glances. Kevin inhaled deeply. Amanda gripped the edge of her skirt, her eyes shining with anticipation. Robert allowed a rare, gentle smile to soften his stern demeanor. My successor, the person who will become the new CEO of Kingsley Enterprises, is not the one in the most expensive suit, not the loudest voice in the boardroom, nor the cleverest at currying favor with leadership. Rather, it is the individual brave enough to walk through the darkest corners of this company in search of its truth. The room went deathly still. Heads turned toward the far end of the lobby. There stood Jordan, the cleaning staff member, her uniform still streaked with soap suds, hands wrapped around her mop handle. Linda Evans, nearby, nearly dropped her clipboard as she mouthed in disbelief, "Jordan, the new CEO." Kevin Matthews froze, his face draining of color. He stared at Jordan, then at Robert, unable to utter a single word. Amanda Whitmore stood paralyzed, horror in her eyes, fingers unconsciously clutching the table's edge as if to hold on to her last shred of power. No one could speak. The employees who had mocked Jordan, took clandestine photos, or whispered jabs now looked down in shame or shock. The buzz of conversation vanished, leaving an almost suffocating silence. Robert stepped forward toward Jordan, meeting her gaze with unmistakable pride. Jordan lifted her chin, heart pounding so fiercely it felt like drums in her chest, yet her eyes shone with unwavering confidence. He spoke again. "My daughter, Jordan Carter, who has labored incognito at the lowest rung of this company for weeks, will lead us forward. She has seen, recorded, and truly understood every hidden corner of Kingsley Enterprises." A ripple of stunned whispers spread, but no one dared object. Linda Evans was the first to smile, tears glistening in her eyes. Pride, gratitude, and the sense of witnessing something miraculous in the heart of this once stifling hierarchy. Kevin Matthews, Amanda Whitmore, and the rest of management faced the most pivotal moment of their careers. The realization that their hollow exercise of power and their prejudiced arrogance would finally meet its reckoning. Jordan stepped forward, peeling off her cleaning apron and smoothing her hair. No longer invisible or belittled, she stood as the steward of Kingsley Enterprises' destiny. Her first words rang out, calm yet commanding. "Thank you, everyone. From this day on, I will guide this company. But first, I need each of you to hear my story and to look at yourselves in the mirror." In that instant, truth, justice, and fairness began to speak. This defining moment would reshape not only a corporation, but also every person who had ever bowed their head to injustice. No one could hide or turn away any longer. The old power game had ended. A new era was dawning, and in Jordan Carter's clear, resolute eyes, the eyes of Kingsley Enterprises' new CEO, a chapter of true equity and dignity had finally begun. The silence that followed Robert Kingsley's announcement pressed down like a shroud over the entire Kingsley Enterprises lobby. The air grew thick and heavy. Every whisper, every footstep, even the hum of the air conditioning seemed swallowed by a chilling stillness. Jordan Carter, the quiet, invisible girl who had worked in the shadows, suddenly stood at the center of this power universe. Every gaze locked onto her, a swirl of shock, shame, fear, and even regret in their eyes. Jordan remained eerily composed as she faced the crowd. She slowly removed her apron, adjusted her attire, and let her eyes sweep the room. The faces that had once sneered or ignored her now drained pale, riddled with embarrassment. Some averted her gaze as if avoiding an unspoken accusation. Others clasped their hands behind their backs, uncertain whether to congratulate her or apologize. Most striking of all was Kevin Matthews, once arrogant and cruel, now frozen like a statue. His body trembled, his face ashen. He'd been used to controlling the room, manipulating feelings and fortunes. Now he was utterly powerless, unable to form a single word. Images of every paper thrown, every coffee cup hurled, every cutting girl taunt flashed like hammers against his long untested pride. Beside him, Amanda Whitmore fared even worse. She pressed one hand to her chest, eyes wide in disbelief. Memories of publicly humiliating Jordan, tossing coffee, spouting "people like you" venom, roared in her mind. Her nails dug so deep into her palms they went white. Only one anguished thought echoed. Has it all come crashing down for me? It wasn't just Kevin and Amanda. Department heads who'd willfully looked the other way, or even joined the bullying, now stood silent, none daring to meet Jordan's gaze. They knew all too well their little empires were nothing but sandcastles before the rising tide of truth. Linda Evans hovered at the edge, eyes glistening with disbelief, joy, and pride. Her small act of kindness finally validated. She gave Jordan a subtle nod, a quiet message of support amid the frozen sea of onlookers. The tension was so thick you could almost hear each breath. Young employees who'd sneakily photographed Jordan now flushed scarlet, heads bowed. No one dared speak or feign knowing anything. Only a vast, respectful silence remained, clearing space for the commanding presence of their new CEO. Jordan took it all in. In that moment, there was no triumph, no anger, only absolute calm. She understood that to rebuild a rotten system, first everyone needed to see its cracks, to taste the fear of living a lie. Robert Kingsley stood beside his daughter, proud yet tinged with regret, studying each reaction before quietly placing a firm hand on Jordan's shoulder. "This place is yours now. Make it better than I ever could." At last, Kevin Matthews forced himself forward, his smile a twisted mask of desperation. "Ms. Carter, I don't know. I really don't know," he stammered, eyes begging Jordan for forgiveness. But she simply shook her head, knowing some wounds and consequences run too deep for apologies. Amanda shuffled forward, hands clasped in trembling hope, but her plea died on her lips when she met Jordan's resolute gaze. The gaze of someone who'd descended into hell and returned to claim her power. The lobby remained taut as a drawn bow. A few mouths moved as if to offer excuses, but all fell silent before Jordan Carter's stern dignity. In what had once been a fortress of arrogance and a cathedral of petty power, everyone finally understood. In a single moment, the balance had irrevocably shifted. Those who had lorded over and mocked the vulnerable now felt firsthand the terror of losing everything. Linda stepped close, laid a gentle hand on Jordan's shoulder, and whispered, "You did it, Jordan. You really did it." Jordan allowed herself the faintest smile, eyes softening for a moment. But across the room, Kevin, Amanda, and the rest of the management still stood frozen, like gray statues marooned in a sea of onlookers. In their eyes danced not only fear, but the dawning regret of realizing the grave consequences of their cruel, petty choices. And as Jordan moved to the podium to speak her first words to the company, the office held its breath in the most electrifying moment in Kingsley Enterprises' history. The moment when truth and justice spoke louder than any taunt, and those who once reveled in another's suffering first tasted fear for their own futures. A moment none would ever forget. A clarion call to conscience for all, and the beginning of an irreversible change. The leaden hush that followed Robert Kingsley's earth-shattering announcement hadn't even begun to lift when Jordan Carter, with steady steps, made her way to the center of the grand lobby. Her eyes burned bright, not a flicker of fear, but the calm poise of someone who's walked through fire and emerged stronger for it. Under the crystal chandeliers, every second stretched on as dozens of staring faces, brimming with anxiety, dread, and a desperate hope for justice, tracked her approach. Jordan stopped directly in front of Kevin Matthews and Amanda Whitmore, the two who had spent weeks wielding their petty authority to push her into the depths of humiliation. They now stood side by side, offering each other a futile shield. Kevin's shoulders locked, his lips pressed tight. Amanda's knuckles had gone white as she gripped her own trembling hands. Her footsteps on the marble floor sounded like hammers striking the rotting pride of that entire assembly. She paused before them, her gaze piercing into each of their eyes. Then, in a voice that was measured, calm, and resonant enough to carry to every corner of the room, she asked, "If you had known from the beginning that I was the CEO, the one with the power to determine your fate, would you still have treated me that way?" The words cut through the crowd like a scalpel, ripping away the mask they'd all worn for so long. Silence slammed back over the lobby. Not a soul dared draw a breath. Kevin's face went pale with shame and fear, his eyes darting for an escape. Amanda blinked rapidly, her lips trembling as she tried in vain to force a reassuring smile. At last, Kevin summoned his courage, his voice thick and hushed so only Jordan and Amanda could hear. I honestly didn't know, Jordan. I didn't think—" Jordan held up a hand to stop him, her gaze unwavering. "Exactly. You never imagined that someone at the bottom could one day stand at the top. You believed power was permanent, a birthright for people like you. So you were all too ready to humiliate, demean, and trample on others just to satisfy your own small egos." Amanda's shoulders shook as tears began to form. She pressed her hands together, voice cracking. I was just following the rules. I didn't mean if I had known." Jordan pivoted to face her squarely, steel in her eyes. "You didn't mean to? You threw coffee onto the very table I'd just cleaned. You mocked me in front of dozens of colleagues and forced me to do the filthiest tasks, because I was the only one here with nothing to lose. And you think an 'I didn't mean to' makes all of that go away?" Her words echoed so sharply that more than a few employees flinched, eyes downcast, guilty for having stood by in silence, complicit in this injustice. Jordan swept her gaze over the entire crowd. "Not just Kevin and Amanda. I want to ask each of you, if you'd known I was the CEO with the authority to shape your futures, would you still have turned a blind eye to unfairness? Would you have stayed silent as someone else was trampled?" Faces reddened, eyes flickered away in shame. Only Linda Evans, standing near the back, met Jordan's gaze with a look of admiration and pride. Everyone else remained mute. Jordan turned back to her two former tormentors and delivered one final, icy question. "So tell me, did you treat me so poorly because you thought I was powerless, or because you've always assumed you had the right to do so?" Kevin bowed his head, unable to speak. Amanda let out a strangled sob as tears rolled down her cheeks. But forgiveness is not something they could beg for, nor something Jordan could grant so easily in this moment. The silence stretched on, solid as stone. In that heavy quiet, the image of Kevin and Amanda, the once proud oppressors, stood transformed into a living lesson. No false power can withstand the force of truth and genuine courage. Jordan took a step back, her voice clear and unwavering as she addressed the company as a whole. "Today, I stand before you, not only as your CEO, but as proof that no one, and I mean no one, has the right to demean or devalue another human being, regardless of their position. Every choice you make, even the smallest one, shapes the true culture of this company, and today we are all going to face that reality." In that moment, the old era of fear and cruelty died, and a new reign of fairness, integrity, and brave compassion began under the leadership of the young black woman who had once been invisible. From that day forward, every pair of eyes in Kingsley Enterprises would look upon Jordan Carter with genuine respect, and with the knowledge that no injustice would ever go unchallenged again. The tension in Kingsley Enterprises' grand lobby hadn't eased a bit after Jordan's cold, decisive questions to Kevin Matthews and Amanda Whitmore. Everyone stood frozen in that silence, every pair of eyes, even those of the powerful friends who had propped up Kevin and Amanda, locked on Jordan Carter's slightest move. Amid that storm of emotion, Robert Kingsley stepped forward, his gaze as sharp as a blade, heavy with the weight of both founder and father. He didn't soften his tone, but took a step back, passing the mantle of judgment entirely to his daughter. "Jordan, this is your company now. You've seen everything with your own eyes. You've also endured its worst. I want to hear from you how we handle those who have destroyed Kingsley Enterprises' core values." The entire office froze again. Kevin staggered back, hands clenched, face drained of all color. Amanda gripped her skirt edge, eyes wide in panic, breathing as if she'd just escaped a nightmare. Both silently prayed for a miracle, but every exit was sealed. Jordan wasted no time. Her voice rang out, firm and unwavering. "Kevin Matthews, Amanda Whitmore, you've not only violated professional ethics, but shattered this company's most fundamental principles: fairness, respect, and human dignity. I hereby terminate both of you, effective immediately. No exceptions, no second chances." Her words sliced through the thick air, drawing an unmistakable line in the company's culture. Kevin collapsed to his knees, head bowed, lips trembling as any defense caught in his throat. For years, he'd felt invulnerable, but now his downfall came not from outside forces, but from the very person he had mocked and belittled. That humiliation, that defeat cut to his soul, a lesson he'd carry for the rest of his life. Amanda Whitmore couldn't maintain her icy composure either. She lunged forward, tears streaming. Her hand clutched at Jordan's arm as her voice broke. "Please, I'm begging you. I have a family. I didn't mean to. I'm so sorry. Don't fire me. I can't lose everything." Jordan withdrew her arm, her eyes steely but not cruel. "You may regret it now, but I, and countless others, have been regretting the pain you caused us all this time. Power isn't meant to humiliate others, and tears won't erase what you've done." Robert Kingsley stood nearby and offered a solemn nod, agreement mixed with the sorrow of a father who had misplaced his trust. He signaled to security, and two men in black suits promptly approached, politely but firmly escorting Kevin and Amanda from the building. Hundreds of employees bore witness, a clarion call to anyone still harboring arrogance, greed, or disregard for others. The mood in the lobby shifted. Those who once laughed at Jordan's suffering now silently hung their heads. Some eyes glistened with tears as people realized they had passively abetted these cruel power plays, just to protect themselves, or worse, to feel part of the strong crowd. Linda Evans, the lone colleague who had quietly helped Jordan, watched with tears of pride and relief. A few younger staff murmured to one another, their eyes shining as they recognized the real impact of workplace culture once thought immutable. Jordan scanned the room again, allowing everyone to feel the weight of injustice, then spoke softly but with authority. "I'm not doing this out of vengeance. I'm doing it to restore fairness. If we want this company to be truly great, every one of us must start changing through the smallest choices. Don't stay silent in the face of injustice. Don't cover up what's wrong, and never presume you have the right to hurt another human being." Justice had finally prevailed, and as those two former pillars of false power bowed their heads and left Kingsley Enterprises, a fresh breeze swept through the once dark corridors of arrogance, discrimination, and fear. A new chapter had begun, born from the courage of one individual and a decisive, necessary act that reminded a whole organization what true justice looks like. The heavy hush remained in Kingsley Enterprises' grand lobby, even after Kevin Matthews and Amanda Whitmore's heavy footsteps faded down the hall. a silence no longer born of fear, but charged with the stirrings of change. The justice just served had planted in everyone's hearts both awe and hope for a new order ahead. Yet true transformation demands more than punishment. It calls for recognition and the open celebration of the virtues that too long lay dormant in the shadow of power. Jordan Carter paused for a moment after watching the two former tormentors leave the building, then inhaled deeply. Her expression softened, a warm smile touching her lips, an inviting contrast to the steely resolve she'd shown only moments ago. She scanned the vast lobby and caught sight of Linda Evans huddled in a corner, hands clasped at her waist, her eyes glistening with emotion. Jordan stepped slowly toward Linda, every eye following her, every heart holding its breath. Stopping in front of her, Jordan's voice rang out, warm but clear. Someone once asked me, "Can one small person truly change such a giant institution?" My answer is this: one timely act of kindness can become the spark that ignites profound transformation. Linda looked up, astonishment and a hint of fear in her wide eyes as Jordan spoke her name before hundreds of people. Jordan offered a grateful smile. "Linda Evans, I'll never forget my first day here, when I received a bottle of water, a neatly folded tissue, and, most precious, a judgment-free look. During my darkest days, your quiet, genuine compassion proved to me that kindness can survive even in the darkest corners of power. You taught me what real courage and integrity look like, even when everyone else chose silence and indifference." The crowd stirred in surprise. Whispers spread. Those who had once bowed their heads or turned away now felt ashamed at Linda's bravery, something they had lacked. Jordan continued, her tone steady. "Today, by the authority vested in me as CEO, I'm promoting Linda Evans, from administrative assistant to head of human resources support. This is not only a reward for her selfless act, but a reminder to everyone here. At Kingsley Enterprises, courage and integrity will always be honored, no matter your role, your background, or the uniform you wear." Linda froze, hands trembling over her mouth. Tears of joy welled up as she looked at Jordan in gratitude, then around at the assembled staff, eager to share this magical moment. After a few seconds, tentative applause began in corners of the room, spreading like ripples across water until the entire lobby burst into celebration. Those who once watched injustice in silence now realized, in Jordan Carter's new culture, not only will the powerful be held accountable, the kind will be justly rewarded. Everyone recognized something fundamental. The era in which kindness equaled weakness was over. From now on, at Kingsley Enterprises, even the smallest act of moral courage will be the cornerstone of advancement. Jordan looked first at Linda, then at the still dawning faces around her. "We've all witnessed the price of cruelty, but remember, just a little kindness can change everything. From today on, I hope each of you will be a Linda Evans in your own roles. True change doesn't begin with grand speeches, but with our daily choices, the small acts of decency we make one by one." Linda, choked with emotion, stepped forward to receive her promotion, not with a speech, but with a radiant smile and a heartfelt embrace of Jordan, an embrace between two allies who had emerged from darkness into the light of fairness. In that moment, the grand lobby softened, as fresh hope stirred in hearts once hardened by fear and injustice. And in everyone's eyes, Jordan Carter became more than a symbol of justice. She became living proof of a new style of leadership. No one will be left behind if they dare to act with decency, speak for truth, and keep faith in the good. A new era at Kingsley Enterprises had begun with that small but mighty act of courage, and for the first time in years, everyone understood that this place could truly begin to heal and grow from within. The applause for Linda Evans still reverberated through the grand lobby when Jordan Carter understood that this moment, when kindness was celebrated in front of hundreds who had once lived in fear and silence, would be the foundation for rebuilding Kingsley Enterprises anew. Her eyes swept the room. Some faces were reddened with tears. Others exhaled in relief, and many averted their gaze in shame for their past indifference and moments of weakness, the cost of staying silent in the face of injustice. Jordan walked to the podium without a microphone. Her voice was more than enough to carry through every crack in their collective conscience. Today, I stand here, not just as CEO, not just with the authority this title confers, but as someone who has endured and witnessed the darkest corners of this place. The lobby fell into an absolute hush. No one dared look away. Jordan turned toward her former colleagues, those who had once scorned her, and those who had quietly endured evil without protest. I've mopped floors for you. I've been called girl, that cleaning lady. I've heard every whisper, every cruel joke, every mocking laugh, simply because I didn't wear a suit, because my skin is different from yours. Because you thought I didn't belong here, I don't blame you. I understand that many believed power was invincible, and injustice just another day in the office. She paused, her gaze solemn, her lips pressed together to underscore the weight of her words. But today, I declare, this is the day Kingsley Enterprises starts over. From this moment forward, authority has value only when paired with respect, integrity, and fairness. No one, whether CEO, manager, or cleaner, has the right to humiliate, trample, or abandon another because of position, race, gender, or background. A wave of emotion washed over the room. Many staff clenched their fists. Some fought back tears. Others bowed their heads in remorse, realizing they'd been part of a system that produced invisible Jordans. Jordan glanced at the large nameplate on the wall, Kingsley Enterprises, then faced the crowd again, each word ringing with conviction. We will adopt an entirely new code of conduct. Any form of discrimination, prejudice, abuse of power, or workplace bullying will face the strictest consequences. No one will ever be fired for speaking truth to power, and no one will keep their position simply because they mastered the art of silence. She directed her next words to those who had walked past her, pretending not to see, who let Amanda and Kevin manipulate the office atmosphere. I don't want those who bow to authority without question. I need people who will stand up for what is right, who will say no to wrongdoing, who will be a Linda Evans in the smallest of acts. You are the foundation of the truly strong Kingsley Enterprises, a place where everyone is seen, heard, and respected equally. Her speech was more than an order. It was a wake-up call, a collective conscience reawakened. In a corner, Linda wept genuine tears of pride and gratitude. A few younger employees, once a part of the silent majority, straightened their backs, eyes shining as if freed from an invisible prison. Jordan pressed on, her tone unwavering. I will personally oversee every change. There will be anonymous suggestion boxes. There will be advocates for the powerless. I want anyone, whether a new hire, a cleaner, or a receptionist, to feel safe stepping forward when treated unfairly without fear of reprisal. And I want each of you, starting today, to ask yourselves, which side will you choose? The side of those courageous enough to speak up, or the crowd that remains silent? A moment of quiet passed. Then the lobby erupted into spontaneous applause. No prompting needed. An instinctive desire to wipe away every stain of past shame, and to commit as one that no Jordan would ever be left behind again, and no Linda would ever have to fight alone. In that instant, in a place once ruled by egos, false power, and fear, a new era truly began. An era of fairness, of respect, of people standing tall and looking at one another with shared humanity. Jordan's speech not only rewrote Kingsley Enterprises' history, but also etched into every heart an eternal truth. The greatest power is that which is built on fairness, respect, and compassion. When the applause for Jordan Carter's speech still rippled through the grand lobby like surging waves, a profound change quietly spread to every corner of Kingsley Enterprises. Every gaze fixed on her no longer held doubt or the scornful sneers of old, but admiration, respect, and a spark of hope newly awakened in each heart. At the head of the room, Robert Kingsley watched his daughter in silent pride. His eyes glistened, lips trembling with emotion, not merely because of the CEO title he had just bestowed, but because Jordan had turned her own darkest trials into a guiding torch for the future of hundreds of people here. He stepped forward to the podium, standing across from Jordan amid the hushed crowd. In that solemn moment, he offered no grand speech or spectacle. Instead, he raised his hand and clasped his daughter's palm, an unadorned yet majestic gesture of transferal. His voice was steady and deep. "My daughter, today I entrust you not only with this CEO chair, but with the true soul of Kingsley Enterprises. From this moment on, our company's history turns a new page, one built on fairness, integrity, and respect. I believe you will do better than I ever could, and correct the mistakes I once made." With that, he squeezed her hand once more and released, encouraging her to take her first steps on this path without casting any shadow over her stride. The entire lobby erupted in applause. Many wiped away tears. After so many years, this corporation had witnessed a moment so simple yet so monumental, not a financial report, not a billion-dollar deal, but the peaceful passing of power founded on human dignity and vision. Jordan gently squeezed her father's hand, then lifted her chin to address the assembly. She did not rush or promise the impossible. She chose words of clarity and conviction. "I will rebuild Kingsley Enterprises so that it is no longer a symbol of blind power, but a place where every person is seen and valued, regardless of race, background, gender, or position." She turned her gaze to the cleaning staff in the corner, those who had once been invisible at every celebration, then to the interns, the women who had endured silent pressure, and the older employees dismissed for not keeping up with new technologies. At Kingsley Enterprises, from today forward, every voice matters equally. No more silent boardrooms, no more hidden hands. We will rewrite our culture at its roots, overhaul recruitment, evaluation, and rewards, ensuring no one is left behind. Her confidence made even her former rivals bow their heads in deference. Linda Evans, newly appointed department head, wept quietly with joy, recognizing that today's victory was not just one person's triumph, but the collective awakening of shared values. Robert Kingsley stepped back, relief and pride softening his face as he witnessed his daughter ascend to the CEO's podium, not as a mere heir, but as a true leader forged in fire, someone who had felt the pain of those at the very bottom of the system. For the first time in years, the entire Kingsley Enterprises team rose in unified applause, welcoming the new era with hope and determination. No one dared belittle another employee again. No one dared mock kindness. No one dared turn away from a colleague's suffering. Jordan Carter, rising from the shadows of the basement, from days of bullying and shame, now sat on the throne of CEO, carrying with her the light of fairness and equality, ready to guide an empire into its promising tomorrow. That moment when a young black woman once deemed an outsider was publicly handed the greatest power in the company, became a historical pivot not only for Kingsley Enterprises, but for every person dreaming of true workplace equity across America. And from this day on, history would no longer be written by tyrants, but by the hands of courageous, compassionate hearts, those willing to acknowledge wrongs and make them right. When the historic handshake between Robert Kingsley and Jordan Carter concluded amid thunderous applause, the great hall of Kingsley Enterprises still buzzed with emotion. Faces that had been tense, wary, or cold now turned toward Jordan, not only as their new CEO, but as a symbol of renewal, of unbreakable spirit, and a yearning for justice. The air felt as if it had been cleansed by a fierce storm. Even the glass walls reflected a collective ready to rewrite history. Jordan stepped forward and drew a slow, steady breath. Each inhale matched the excited pounding of 100 hearts awaiting her closing words. She paused, meeting the gaze of everyone present, those who had once been her enemies, those who had stayed silent or turned away, and lingered a moment longer on the faces of the brave few who had stood for truth. Her voice rang out not with bitterness, but with the seasoned strength of experience and the depth of forgiveness. Friends, I once believed that justice came through punishment, by giving back what we had suffered. But today, standing here, I've learned that we don't change the world through vengeance. True change comes through the power of fairness, the grace of compassion, and a belief in our capacity to make amends. A gentle murmur rippled through the crowd. Voices of those who had been fearful or selfish, but now felt a lightness in being heard and forgiven. Jordan continued, her gaze warm, yet her words carving themselves indelibly into every mind. I have witnessed cruelty that shattered trust, and I've tasted the loneliness of standing up while everyone else turned their backs. But I have also seen that a single spark of kindness can banish all darkness. We are not unfeeling machines. Every one of us deserves a chance to right our wrongs. She looked toward Linda Evans, the quiet embodiment of genuine kindness, and then back to the assembly. Remember, real power is not the ability to make others bow in fear, but to lift them up, inspire them, and preserve respect for all, even at their weakest, most vulnerable moments. Jordan paused, inviting each person to reflect on their past, their present, and the future that lay ahead. A gentle smile spread across her face, soft yet resolute. I hope that every day at Kingsley Enterprises you'll ask yourselves, if I were in Jordan's place, humiliated, cast to the bottom, what would I do when given the choice? Would I seek revenge or rebuild with justice and mercy? Would I remain silent like the majority or dare to speak up in even the smallest way? Her voice rose, clear and decisive, for the final call. You don't have to be a grand hero. You just must refuse to turn away from another's suffering. And if any of you should ever walk through darkness as I did, know this. It is your compassion and courage that can transform this place into a beacon of light for everyone. Without prompting, the entire room rose in a spontaneous standing ovation, celebrating not just their new leader, but pledging to cleanse their own hearts and commit to change. Linda Evans wiped away a tear and stepped forward to embrace Jordan, sharing in her triumph. Robert Kingsley took a respectful step back, his face shining with pride, knowing he had entrusted his legacy to the right person, someone brave enough to confront darkness, to expose truth, and yet still hold fast to hope in humanity. And that final message, simple yet profound, etched itself into every mind in the hall. We don't change the world with vengeance, but through fairness, mercy, and faith in transformation. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? That question became the measure of each person's integrity and courage, whether at Kingsley Enterprises or anywhere life's journey takes them. From Jordan's story, we learn that the courage of one voice, chosen with justice and compassion, can indeed shift an entire system. Wherever you stand, and whatever your circumstance, the choice between silence, indifference, or compassionate action defines who you truly are. So what about you? If you ever become Jordan, will you choose revenge, or will you rebuild with kindness and justice? Share your thoughts and answers in the comments below. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe so that more people can carry this message forward. We'll see you in the next video with more stories of resilience and hope.